Before passing judgment, allow me to explain the path that led me here. For my 62nd birthday, I assumed we were heading out for a meal. I chose my nicest sweater and took time to fix my hair. Yet, rather than sweets and cheerful moments, I ended up with a packed bag and was deserted. This was merely the opening chapter. If you assume disloyalty strikes only from outsiders, brace yourself for when it carries your family name. Remain with me until the finish, and let me know in the comments the place from which you're viewing. People often claim a parent's affection is boundless, that it's enduring, merciful, and everlasting. I hold that belief. I embodied it. For every bruised knee, every restless evening, every performance at school, I stood by Brandon, my sole child. I awoke on my special day with a spark of excitement in my heart. That well-known glow of expectation. Reaching 62. By myself in my simple home in Dayton, Ohio, yet optimistic. Brandon hadn't reached out often recently. He mentioned his job was overwhelming, that relations with his spouse were strained, but certainly he'd appear today. I prepared flapjacks, the ones he adored, and arranged settings for two. By midday, solitude still surrounded me. My spirits dipped slightly, but I held back from despair. I glanced at my device repeatedly, scanning past messages to sense some bond. In the afternoon, the bell chimed. I swung open the door to find Brandon there, sporting that youthful smile he displayed when seeking a favor. "Joyful birthday, Mother," he announced, presenting a modest bunch of flowers from a supermarket. I grinned despite the ache in my core and embraced him firmly. "You made it." "Naturally," he replied, tapping my shoulder awkwardly. "Put on something nice. I've booked a table for a meal." I accepted without doubt. I snatched my jacket, a compact handbag, and slipped into footwear that always squeezed my feet but appeared elegant. I experienced a thrill, similar to a young lady attending a dance, but our route didn't lead to downtown or any eatery. We arrived at a spot featuring an extended path bordered by maple trees, their foliage shifted to shades of burnt amber and crimson. I gazed at the entrance marker and sensed a knot in my gut. Willow Pines Retirement Community. "Brandon, what's going on here?" He swallowed hard. "Mother, we must discuss this. Living by yourself isn't secure any longer. With your episodes of forgetfulness." "What episodes of forgetfulness?" I retorted sharply. He pressed on. "I've located an excellent spot. It's protected, cozy. You'll be around others in your generation, with programs to join." I let out a harsh chuckle, the type that lacks any real humor. "You're joking. You transported me to this on my celebration day." He exited the vehicle. "Come on, let's enter." I stayed rooted in place. At that point, he lifted the rear compartment. My luggage sat there, already filled. I gazed at it, immobilized. "You rummaged through my belongings." He exhaled heavily. "Avoid complicating this further." Within, it seemed as if the clock had halted. Friendly expressions at the front desk. The odor of disinfectant mixed with boiled greens. He submitted documents, official forms, a shift of authority for decisions, my identity, his endorsement. Completed. I held back tears at that moment. Not immediately. They guided me to a space with neutral-toned walls, a bed that could be adjusted, and a narrow view toward a stone barrier. My festive present. I perched on the mattress edge, jacket remaining on, as a chill penetrated my core. No treats, no flames, merely quiet. Time dragged on. Eventually, I unwrapped the floral arrangement. It had faded during the journey. The blossoms mirrored my inner state. That evening, I remained alert, attuned to the soft movements of caregivers, the faint murmur of a television from afar in the corridor. The bedding felt overly rigid. The linens carried a scent of cleanser. I revisited each exchange with Brandon from the previous 12 months, searching for clues I'd overlooked. I reflected on instances where I agreed when refusal was warranted. The occasions I defended him, provided funds, offered justifications to acquaintances. The times I suppressed letdown due to my devotion. But that evening I ceased justifying him. A vital element within me fractured. The following day, I requested my mobile from a caregiver. She explained my child had managed it, deactivated the service, claiming it overwhelmed me. That's when it dawned on me, I wasn't placed here for nurturing. I was placed here to vanish. And without an escape route, they'd prevail. Yet, I'm far sturdier than they presume. Not remotely frail. I abstained from meals for 48 hours. Not to protest, but simply because neither the dishes nor the reality sat well with me. Being regarded as obsolete shatters an irreplaceable aspect of your spirit. I'd nurtured a youngster, created a household, cherished intensely, and now I amounted to merely a chamber identifier and a medical record. The caregivers were generally compassionate, but compassion resembles condescension when you're confined. They addressed me as dear and treated me as if I were a child or ancient. Nobody inquired about my past pursuits. Nobody asked about my passions. To them, I represented another elderly lady in soft footwear, misplacing details. Even though I hadn't misplaced a single thing. My companion in the room, Doris, dozed throughout the daylight and breathed loudly through the darkness. She spoke little, but when she did, it centered on individuals absent from visits for ages. I paid attention because I understood the pang of emptiness all too well. I strove to maintain mental acuity. I observed broadcasts in the shared area and tackled word games left in the passage. I revisited a book I'd encountered twice prior. But an inner part of me descended further, into gloom. Then, on the fourth morning, I encountered Ruby. She hadn't been scheduled for that shift. Another caregiver reported ill, and Ruby, youthful with her hair twisted into braids beneath her uniform headpiece and warmth in her gaze, stepped in. She was monitoring my health signs when she remarked, "This isn't the right place for you." I glanced at her, taken aback. She grinned. "No offense intended. Many here require assistance, and that's fine, but you don't appear adrift." I fought back the abrupt moisture in my vision. We started conversing. She inquired about Brandon. I shared what I could without crumbling. She absorbed it. Not merely bobbed her head, truly absorbed it. Later that afternoon, she returned holding an item. "This was Mr. Henley's, a former occupant who departed last week," she murmured. "We discovered it hidden in a scripture book. Nobody retrieved it. It was a chance ticket, creased, slightly discolored, and issued 14 days prior." I let out a parched, fragile laugh. "And you're suggesting I test my fortune?" She blinked playfully. "Perhaps the universe is repaying you." I hadn't intended to pursue it. Not initially. It struck me as foolish, but idleness and hopelessness form odd companions. That evening, I bided time until the corridor fell silent. I accessed one of the establishment's outdated computers in the relaxation space and entered the digits. My fingers halted. My sight swept the display repeatedly. 15 million. I clamped both palms over my lips. I surveyed the area. Empty. The ensuing hush overwhelmed. It wasn't delight that surged. Far from it. It was terror. Raw, surging terror. Should Brandon discover, should anybody discover, I output the verification, compressed it tiny, and concealed it within my undergarment. The next day, I drew Ruby to a private spot. "I require a confidential discussion with a legal expert." She refrained from probing. She simply affirmed. Ruby was acquainted with an individual, a pro bono lawyer who visited bi-monthly to aid older adults with estate plans and similar matters. I anticipated with a racing pulse until his arrival that Friday. He went by Aaron, youthful, astute, and crucially, confidential. We occupied a cramped staff area. I passed him the prize confirmation and murmured, "Can you assist me in vanishing?" His brows lifted, yet he remained composed. "We'll act swiftly," he responded. The subsequent period blurred. Forms, validations, monetary shifts, a fresh device, a provisional postal location. He engaged a neutral wealth consultant who established a concealed fund. My identity remained absent. Brandon would detect no trace. I endorsed an updated testament, designating all to benevolence, details withheld for now. Brandon had already relinquished my existence once. I refused to permit a repeat. Ruby embraced me the evening of my departure. "Remember us in your liberty," she breathed. I withheld tears. I couldn't afford them. I departed prior to sunrise, clad in attire not my own, toting a sack containing solely necessities. They viewed me as feeble, shattered, isolated. but I was poised to transform into a phantom possessing 15 million. Let them search. They'd never anticipate my return. The coach journey from Ohio stretched on, hushed and frigid. I positioned myself toward the rear, cover raised, shades donned, grasping that sack as if it contained my essence. In numerous respects, it did. I lacked a precise destination. All I grasped was the need for sufficient separation to evade detection. Not from Brandon, not his partner, not the legal representatives he'd probably already summoned. Aaron had facilitated the acquisition of a humble dwelling under a novel fun title in countryside Tennessee. Isolated from networks, yet habitable. No surveillance, no immediate residence, merely adequate gap between myself and the existence I abandoned. Upon entering Kentucky territory, I released a breath held for hours. Liberation possessed a flavor, not sugary. It resembled metal, akin to blood mixed with dread. The residence lacked extravagance. A one-level stone building with peeling color and a tilted post container, yet it featured functional warmth, pure liquid, and above all, tranquility. Not the variety found in a care center encircled by those who've surrendered. This was the sort of tranquility that permitted respiration. In the ensuing days, I existed as a silhouette. I prepared basic dishes, strolled to collect mail, lounged on the veranda swathed in an aged blanket, observing gusts transport withered foliage over the grass. I monitored updates compulsively, anticipating my details in prominent text halfway. Vanished lady claims 15 million. Offspring alleges psychological fragility. But nothing surfaced. Not immediately. I secured the prize slip in a flame-resistant container beneath the plank in the passage storage. Beside it, the revised testament, a disposable device, and a message for any discoverer, as a precaution. One dawn, roughly 7 days post-departure from Willow Pines, the calm fractured. A rap at the entrance. I stiffened. I disclosed my whereabouts to no one. I lacked even a payment card tied to my identity. My pulse thundered like battle percussion in my torso. I crept to the pane and glimpsed. Merely a courier. Provisions. Element of Aaron's setup. Nonetheless, the unease lingered. That midday, intrigue prevailed. I established a fictitious social media identity and sought Brandon. There he appeared, beaming in his display image as if existence remained intact. In his recent update, he stated, "Should anyone spot my parent, Margaret Taylor, kindly reach me or local authorities in Dayton. She's absent for multiple days. We fear for her well-being." Underneath, numerous responses accumulated. Blessings, sympathies, individuals commending Brandon as an exemplary offspring. I chuckled intensely until tears flowed. Oh, they lacked comprehension. None whatsoever. But what genuinely shattered me wasn't the entry. It was the image he selected. Not current. From half a decade prior. Among our final joint festivities. I wore a glittering festive cap, his limb encircling me. We appeared content. How simple to feign affection in snapshots. That evening, rest evaded me. I occupied the sitting area, fixated on the hearth. My mind looped endlessly, and the extended contemplation deepened their shadows. I recalled each occasion I'd supplied Brandon funds, each advance, each fabrication. I recalled his subtle manipulations. He'd comment, "You've mentioned that before," when I hadn't, or "You're misremembering increasingly lately." I assumed it stemmed from advancing years. I deemed it my responsibility. It wasn't. He aimed to instill doubt. Thus, upon assuming command of my affairs, I'd offer no opposition. Well, I finished with domination. The subsequent dawn, I dialed Aaron via a temporary line. "I require another adjustment to my testament," I declared. He skipped inquiries. "What modifications?" "I desire absolute clarity. Brandon Taylor inherits 0. Not a cent, not an heirloom, not a recollection. Completed." He remarked, "You're secure now, Margaret." But security eluded me. Not fully, since inwardly I sensed an impending event, and preparation was essential. It commenced with correspondence, unadorned casing, absent sender details, nestled amid service statements and advertisements. I might have overlooked it sans the material. Thicker than standard, luxurious. My insides churned upon contact. Within a lone page, a duplicate, my mark or its semblance. Beneath, two additional, one from my departed spouse, Richard, and another from Brandon. It constituted a borrowing agreement from a dozen years back, substantial sum, private advance under Richard's and my identities. The financial institution's emblem authentic. Likewise the certification seal, yet I'd never endorsed that sheet. Never. I settled on the faded couch, the message quivering in my grasp. The record captured my script down to the curve in the M of Margaret, but an element seemed amiss, overly precise, overly rehearsed. My spouse would never conceal a borrowing that way. And Brandon, he remained silent. I extracted the flame-resistant container, fetched the earlier dossier Aaron assisted in assembling, a compilation of prior fiscal papers rescued pre-departure. Within, I located 3 further sheets, each bearing my imitated mark. A frigid awareness crept over me. Brandon had pilfered from Richard and me across years. It clarified the odd strain in our concluding period. How Richard evaded specific money discussions. Our sudden reductions. How Brandon perpetually required aid for crises yet acquired fresher vehicles annually. The subdued disputes at night I attributed to employment. The postponed trips. The poor ventures. I'd faulted maturity, economics, a downturn in fortune. But Brandon bore responsibility. Throughout. I withheld tears. Not on this occasion. Instead, I activated my portable computer and delved further. Across the following 72 hours, I assembled the fragments. Brandon had counterfeited various borrowing papers utilizing Richard's identification code and mine. The figures fluctuated. Music. Though others had been subtly transferred to recovery agencies. Richard likely settled the bulk pre-passing, carrying the disgrace to his grave. But one profile, ongoing, displayed an expanding total exceeding thousands, and it had lapsed under my identity mere 90 days prior to my placement at Willow Pines. I occupied the dimness of that compact Tennessee lounge. Display illuminating ahead, fists squeezed so firmly my joints throbbed. This transcended disloyalty. This encompassed robbery, deception, offense. I connected with Aaron once more. Fresh details emerged, I informed him. Imitated papers, borrowings. Brandon's doing. I trust your account, he responded evenly. Wish to pursue legal action? Not immediately. Readiness lagged. Not from uncertainty. Those vanished. Readiness lagged because I desired him to experience dread initially, the void, the uncertainty. I desired him to ponder if I possessed knowledge. For reality dictated, I ceased concealment. I commenced pursuit. I initiated compiling each record available. Every profile linked to my identity, every archived correspondence, every monetary alert Brandon formerly dispatched representing me. I even approached our former financial institution and solicited archives via a formal rationale Aaron aided in composing. Fragment by fragment, the enigma materialized, and its revelation chilled my veins. Brandon had secured an elevated cost advance against the modest enterprise I co-established with Richard during the 80s, a food service operation we managed from our storage space in those initial times. He employed that entity, technically operational, to obtain a significant credit extension. He authorized it with Richard's identity 24 months post-Richard's demise. That surpassed ethical lapse. That constituted national offense. I preserved all to a secure directory, duplicated it, and produced a physical version for storage in the container under the planks. Uncertainty clouded my timeline because if Brandon's desperation matched my suspicions, and if he harbored even minimal awareness of my disappearance with millions, his approach loomed. Have you ever gazed upon a lifelong beloved and comprehended you never truly grasped them? That's the sensation. Navigating sheets of records linking my offspring to a path of dishonesty so extended and knotted it nauseated me. The individual I once cradled to slumber had matured into an unfamiliar figure. And not merely unfamiliar, hazardous. At this stage, verification was complete. Brandon had mimicked my mark, deceived institutions, coerced my departed spouse into concealment, and most grievous, executed it beneath the veneer of a committed child. But the bleakest revelation emerged via a basic inquiry in an accessible repository. With minor aid from Aaron's resources, I uncovered it. Brandon Taylor, presently subject to national scrutiny for deceptive revenue declarations, misappropriation, and persona exploitation. Persona exploitation. That struck deepest. I selected the dossier, shaking. Particulars largely obscured, yet charges evident. Brandon had fabricated false personas, exaggerated earnings, invented reductions, and lodged submissions to extract funds via reimbursements. Certain personas deceased, others aged, some authentic individuals, myself included. The Revenue Service had marked multiple submissions under my identity across the prior 36 months. I remained unaware. I fixated on the display, thoughts whirling. Had he schemed to seize my assets from the outset? Did this motivate his haste to confine me and terminate my communication? It lacked care. It embodied restriction. He sought to render me mute, bewildered, and sidelined. I retreated from the workstation, striding the confined lounge, palm pressed to my torso to soothe the shakes. My own offspring had militarized my persona, employed my identity as an instrument for his plots, and upon intensifying pressure, intended to discard me like an unresolved detail in a chaotic tale. Only now I transcended mere unresolved detail. I grasped the strand. I avoided alerting authorities. Not immediately. Instead, I commenced cataloging all. Every falsehood, every advance, every falsified stroke on parchment. I output them, organized in beige sleeves, tagged with timelines. I initiated vocal memos, not from fear of lapse, but to ensure my tone lingered if misfortune struck. Then I decided. I dispatched a duplicate of the complete dossier namelessly to the Justice Bureau. Not for declaration, not immediately, but to sow a kernel. They'd possess the proof. Should harm befall me, they'd recognize the direction. Yet, the sensation persisted, he was aware. I began observing vehicles lingering unusually near the dwelling. Once a gentleman rapped, asserting a community poll. I refrained from unlocking, merely observed via the drape, device ready. Each tap, each chime, startled me. And yet I held position. Not fleeing this round. I placed another summons to Aaron. We must conclude the fund. I instructed him the testament, as well. I desire total safeguarding. He consented. We arranged it under my fresh identity with strata of judicial barriers. Should Brandon attempt to claim, he'd face rejection from every tribunal nationwide. But despite fortifying with documents and tactics, the sentimental impact struck during the stillest intervals. I'd occupy evenings recalling Brandon's youth. His giggles, his wounded limbs, how he drifted off against my form. I'd recall the adolescent phase when challenges intensified, yet I persisted with him. The university communications, the abrupt quiets, the expanding gap. How did I overlook? How extended his drift while I clung? Perhaps that's the gravest disloyalty, the variety observed gradually, perpetually anticipating an alternative. But now awareness dawned, and I refused to allow him to alter my narratives close, because for my initial instance, I wielded the instrument. The note arrived in a basic pale casing, absent sender. But upon recognizing the script, certainty hit. Brandon's letters always featured pointed, tilted lines, as if his tool hurried to conclude. Within, a solitary line. I recognize your actions, and this concludes nothing. I perused it multiple times. Then I chuckled, not from mirth, but from the precise conceit I anticipated. No, I yearn for you. No, your location? Merely an alert or menace. I creased the note precisely and inserted it into my expanding proof collection. By this point, nearly 3 weeks had elapsed since my exit. Brandon had initiated what resembled a widespread plea of worry, imploring for leads, granting discussions to regional broadcasts, embodying the distraught offspring questing for his bewildered and fragile parent. It might have amused if not so eerie. And then, as anticipated, he advanced. A dispatch from Dayton's Regional Tribunal, formal, verified. I acknowledged receipt with unsteady grip and positioned myself at the dining surface to unveil it. He had submitted a request to deem me psychologically unfit. Breath escaped me. The record contained accounts from 2 witnesses asserting I'd exhibited unpredictable and muddled conduct over the prior 12 months. One a past resident nearby, the other his former school companion, barely an acquaintance. Brandon's counsel had included sound segments, too. Fragments of prior voice recordings I'd left during distress, isolation, or release. Trimmed and merged. They portrayed me as disordered, unreliable. He even appended a note from a mental health specialist, one unfamiliar to me, expressing worry over my vanishing and suspicious conduct. They sought judicial freeze on my holdings to commandeer the fund to retrieve me. It felt as if oxygen had been expelled from my chest. Aaron visited that evening. He examined all, his demeanor impassive. Tasks await, he eventually stated. But Margaret maintained composure. Retain focus. They bank on frenzy. I affirmed, overly desensitized for tears. The following period stormed forward. Aaron engaged a seasoned advocate to aid preparation. We amassed records, visual discussions, fiscal tracks, even a chronological log to demonstrate my rational state daily post-departure. We arranged a neutral mental assessment. The specialist, a compassionate lady titled Dr. Levine, visited the residence and devoted 3 hours. She probed my early years, my departed partner, Brandon. I disclosed all. She avoided sympathy. She absorbed. She posed genuine inquiries. Upon departure, she grasped my palm and remarked, "You're the clearest individual I've encountered recently." It resembled my initial inhalation in days. Nonetheless, tension escalated. Details of the session escaped. The web, briefly aligned with Brandon's vanished parent narrative, started altering. Inquiries surfaced. Why no outreach from me? Am I unreliable? Does another orchestrate? Media adores enigmas, and Brandon mastered supplying them. But fear dissipated because now I possessed beyond mere evidence. I held intent. In the serenity of my modest abode, I commenced crafting a recorded declaration. I withheld release, but readiness mattered should they mute me. I faced the lens and stated, I am Margaret Taylor. I possess full faculties, and the individual I relied on most deceived me. I avoided tears. I avoided shouts. I merely conveyed facts because awareness of the horizon existed. And this round, judgment wouldn't target me. The Dayton Judicial Building remained unaltered since my prior visit years back. When I settled a traffic fine and occupied a space amid folks eager to erase errors. Then I embodied spouse, parent, believer in redemption. Now I stood accused. Aaron suggested a tire plain yet resilient. Something declaring, I'm present to declare, not implore. I selected a deep blue overcoat with metallic fastenings, my spouse's vintage timepiece, and practical elevated shoes that echoed assertively along the judicial passages. Brandon occupied a forward seat upon my entry. He rose as if scripted, a veil of worry overlaying his features. He extended a grin, the sort outsiders might deem affectionate, but I recognized its essence. He aimed to inter me. The magistrate, a senior gentleman with weary gaze, outlined the proceeding regarding Margaret Taylor's psychological capacity. The terms lingered like haze. Brandon's counsel proceeded initially. A lofty figure with refined tone and excess assurance. He outlined it narratively. Margaret vanished. Margaret acted inconsistently. Margaret possibly influenced. Margaret endangered herself and resources. He presented the specialist's correspondence from the unfamiliar doctor and displayed those sound excerpts of me, altered and combined like a terror sequence. I heard myself appear fragmented, frantic, even erratic, stripped of setting. I observed the magistrate's brows elevate, my palms tightened on the support. Then Brandon addressed. Magistrate, he uttered, tone quivering appropriately. I cherish my parent. Truly. This ranks as my toughest endeavor. But I feel she's exploited. She's altered. She's astray. That's when I rose. My opportunity, magistrate. The magistrate affirmed. I advanced gradually to the platform, pausing sufficiently for my aura to embed. Then I vocalized. I am Margaret Taylor. Aged 62. I lack mental deficiency. I am not astray, and I serve as no one's prey. I unveiled my collection deliberately, precisely, and delivered a duplicate of Dr. Levine's comprehensive mental analysis to the magistrate, authorized, timed, and verified. The outcome, entirely rational, absent signs of mental deterioration, sentimentally balanced. I noted the counsel's frame stiffen. Brandon's expression flickered. Then I proceeded. I possess here, I declared, elevating another collection, a record of each communication I initiated the week pre-departure. Proofs for asset shifts to a lawful fund, health logs, unblemished, and a sworn statement from the lawyer who aided my exit from the center, affirming I was coherent, reasoned, and wholly directing my choices. I halted, and I hold additional items. But I withhold presentation today, unless required. I concealed the dossier, the one containing each counterfeit mark, each pilfered advance, each altered revenue sheet Brandon contacted. That served as my trump. Instead, I addressed the magistrate. He confined me without approval, seized my device, my liberty, and now seeks to claim my remnants. My expression, my self-reliance, my respect. Prevent him. The chamber fell mute. Aaron positioned nearby, quiet yet firm. His gaze met mine, admiring yet unsurprised. The magistrate reclined, digit drumming the dossier. I require period to examine all records and the health assessment. The session resumes in 14 days. 14 days. Brandon pivoted toward me as proceedings concluded. He attempted eye contact, but I denied him fulfillment. He departed the chamber with tightened hands and rigid mandible. His veneer fractured. And I exited with elevated chin. The conflict persisted. But initially, victory seemed attainable. 14 days. That's the duration the magistrate allotted. But Brandon squandered none. Mere hours post-judicial exit, he intensified his widespread effort. Regional broadcasts featured a fresh piece. Absent parent resurfaces in session. Offspring dreads manipulation. Brandon addressed the lens directly, gaze damp, tone wavering suitably. I merely desire my parents' security. He expressed she's endured much. She's unclear in thought, and I worry surrounding figures harbor ill motives. I observed the transmission from my lounge, limbs crossed, mandible firm. No ill figures encircled me. Solely me. Solely Margaret Taylor. The lady who reared him, who forfeited, who pardoned beyond maternal duty. And he dared depict me as a marionette. That instant clarified. The internal silent conflict I'd proclaimed sufficed no longer. Action beckoned. I summoned Aaron and requested his presence. Upon arrival, I delivered the secured casing holding every record I'd amassed. The deceptive borrowings, the imitated marks, the revenue submissions Brandon lodged under my identity. Dispatch it, I directed. Not to the tribunal, to the Justice Bureau namelessly. He unsealed the casing, scanned the sheets, and affirmed. This will capture notice. I rely on it. But completion evaded. That evening, employing a fresh pseudonym and novel digital profile, I executed a substantial contribution, $5 million to a nationwide charity shielding seniors from monetary mistreatment. No identity linked, merely the exchange. Within 7 days, they initiated a drive utilizing my situation as emblem. They avoided my name, but timing aligned perfectly. Folks commenced murmuring, circulating, interrogating, how does a parent evaporate, then resurface with funds, yet her offspring attempts confinement? Remarks overflowed digital platforms. Issue with the offspring. Permit her voice. Why no inquiry into her perspective? I distrust him. Brandon's meticulously built persona started teetering. Then an unforeseen development. A reporter from a prominent publication contacted Aaron. She sought my narrative. She vowed privacy. No identities, no images, merely facts. I consented. We convened at a serene eatery 2 communities distant. I donned shades and a cap. We occupied the rear seating. She activated capture and permitted my words. I described the center, the unanticipated deposit, Brandon seizing my device, my holdings, my respect. I omitted the prize. Not immediately. When she queried the legal matter, I merely stated, he's attempting life command. Again, the account published 48 hours later. Parent or affluent? The muting of Margaret T. Connections formed swiftly. Digital speculators pondered. Was the vanished parent the nameless giver? Did this motivate her offspring's incompetence claim? Further murmurs, further skepticism. And yet, I stayed mute. For Brandon's collapse wouldn't stem from allegation. It would stem from confrontation. 48 hours pre-session resumption, Aaron fielded a summons. From the Justice Bureau. They'd acquired our nameless dossier and initiated proceedings. Brandon remained unaware, but while he constructed a fortress of deceptions in tribunals and lenses, I ignited the base and the blazes ascended. The follow-up session felt chillier, not from climate, though Tennessee gusts had grown harsh that period, but from an atmospheric alteration. Brandon entered the chamber appearing diminished in assurance. His posture lacked height. His counsel murmured intently as they settled. They'd encountered the peace. They'd sensed the digital shift. They experienced the fissures. I remained composed, my record collection neatly in my lap. Fear absent. Anger present. Not the outburst variety, but the honed precision type. This round, we initiated. Aaron commenced with a declaration that hushed the chamber. Magistrate, he started. Post-prior session, we've finalized a complete neutral mental assessment, delivered comprehensive fiscal records confirming Mrs. Taylor's self-sufficiency and clarity, and uncovered via valid open archives that the requester, Mr. Brandon Taylor, faces current national probe for various monetary offenses, encompassing persona exploitation and revenue deception. He delivered the magistrated duplicate of the open case listing. Brandon's counsel rose, promptly objecting. That probe bears no relevance to. The magistrate elevated a palm. Settle. The chamber inhaled collectively. Then the true strike. Dr. Levine, my neutral assessor, occupied the platform. Serene, perceptive, straightforward. She affirmed not only my mental fitness, but emotional stability and complete consciousness of choices, including facility departure. She's not merely lucid, Dr. Levine stated, she's intentional, reflective. No health grounds for incompetence declaration. I regarded Brandon then. His palms clutched the surface so intensely his joints paled. His veneer, that meticulously built worry facade, disintegrated momentarily. Aaron then displayed our concluding proof, a chronology. It illustrated precisely when Brandon sought asset command and its perfect alignment with substantial extractions from his declining enterprise. Happenstance? Scarcely. The magistrate examined all quietly. Brandon received response opportunity. He rose, his tone fractured. My parent ails. She's evidently influenced by another. She wouldn't behave thus unless bewildered or unreliable. This isn't her. I rose then and confronted him squarely. I am her, I declared. All stilled. I am the lady who remained vigilant when you suffered illness at 6. Who forfeited outings, who traded ornaments to fund your education sessions, who prepared your preferred dish even amid scarce provisions for myself. I am her, and you abandoned me in a center as if I meant nothing. I pivoted to the magistrate. And now, magistrate, I request permission to demonstrate I am not nothing. The magistrate advanced, fingers interlocked, and articulated gradually. Mrs. Taylor, grounded on the substantial proof supplied, your mental assessment, and the discrepancies in the requester's assertions, I dismiss this matter. Your monetary holdings and individual sovereignty are entirely reinstated. This tribunal acknowledges you as capable and self-governing. I avoided tears, but my palms quivered mildly as I gathered my sheets and exited the chamber. Brandon uttered nothing upon my passage. His gaze frenzied. Not rage-dread. He recognized conclusion. At minimum this segment. But unknown to him, while he expended weeks proving my instability, I'd constructed beyond defense. A heritage. And completion distant. The summons arrived post-midnight. Aaron's tone strained, yet firm. It occurred. The Justice Bureau initiated official actions. Brandon's identity on the listing. I remained silent. I merely occupied the obscurity, gazing at gusts swaying branches past my pain. A segment of me anticipated this. But arrival lacked triumph. It seemed predestined. The subsequent dawn, society aligned. Media surged initially. Brandon Taylor, offspring in recent senior mistreatment spotlight under national scrutiny. My identity indirect, but connections too proximate for oversight. Folks recalled the absent parent, the judicial clash, the nameless giver, the delicate lady who vanished yet stood resilient in tribunal weeks post. Now their ideal offspring unraveled, and they craved my input. I maintained quiet 48 hours, deactivated the screen, disregarded the device. I prepared morning meal, observed avians forage the frost-damaged lawn, occupied with writing tool, and composed missives never for dispatch. But quiet lacked equity. Timing arrived. I connected with Sarah, the reporter who'd convened secretly weeks prior. I indicated readiness to address, this round visually. No pseudonyms, no obscurity. We planned the discussion for the ensuing Friday. Nationwide broadcast complete segment. She queried certainty. Never sure, I responded. Interview day, I attired plainly. Ashen knit, tiny metallic studs, absent cosmetics, absent arranger, merely honesty. We positioned opposite in a serene space, illumination gentle and inviting. Sarah advanced. Margaret, society grasps the titles. They've absorbed Brandon, the matter. But heart eludes. Why currently? I faced the lens squarely. Because it transcends me, I responded. It concerns each guardian who surrendered all and was discarded. Each senior disregarded, obliterated, or imprisoned under affection pretext. I nearly joined them. And silence ends. Then I narrated my tale, the center, the chance slip, the deceptions revealed, the dossier dispatched. I omitted naught. Sarah's gaze moistened during my words. But tears evaded me. Tears concluded. That evening, the discussion broadcasted. Countless observed. Communications surged. Individuals nationwide sharing personal tales of disloyalty, desertion, and endurance. I transcended Margaret. I mirrored. Brandon avoided public words, but associates indicated devastation, existence crumbling. Appropriate. He constructed that existence on control, and now it buckled under his brutality's mass. But gloating absent. Instead, action commenced. I outlined a base launch, one shielding seniors from judicial and monetary harm. Not nominally, but with authentic legal aid, genuine resources, genuine support. I titled it the Margaret Initiative because if they aimed to employ my identity for dignity stripping, I'd employ it for dignity restoration. Yet, ache persisted. Not from Brandon's torment, but from once devoted loyalty that obscured. And now adaptation to illusion absence. But superiority emerged. I possessed honesty and none could seize it anew. Brandon's detention lacked alarms. It arrived via titles. Brandon Taylor charged on various instances of electronic deception, persona pilfering, and revenue avoidance. I absorbed the update on a serene dawn with brew and grasp, and my feline coiled nearby. The dwelling stilled, save the constant drone of the cooler and gusts grazing the covers. For extended period, I fixated on the piece, not from disbelief. Belief present, but imagination of this instant repeated so often that reality resembled repetition. He gained release on guarantee. Naturally, wealth purchases duration even absent tranquility. But harm completed. His identity equated disloyalty. Prior patrons withdrew dealings. His credit extensions halted. Companions vanished. Even his spouse released a declaration via counsel. She pursued separation. Isolation enveloped him. Triumph should have surged. But hollowness prevailed. Betrayal survival avoids wholeness. It yields wisdom. Indeed, keener, resilient perhaps. But tenderness perishes, that unquestioning reliance, that conviction affection suffices for loyalty. I avoided mourning that tenderness. I interred it. A frigid weekend marked my initial Town Hub venture post-discussion broadcast. Folks identified me. They avoided murmurs. They avoided stares. They grinned. One lady, perhaps mid-40s, contacted my limb and remarked, "You inspired my parent to escape a harmful circumstance." A youthful gentleman at the medicine counter inserted a memo into my remedy sack. My elder says, "Gratitude." I avoided seeking notice, but it arrived softly, like rays piercing dense vapors. Aaron visited that midday. They proposed a bargain. He indicated 10 years upon admission of fault. Otherwise, proceeding ensues, and I queried, still feigning miscomprehension. He believes system outmaneuver possible. I denied with head. He's feigned throughout existence, Aaron paused. He hasn't attempted contact? I met his gaze, not squarely, but receipt occurred. A note, unmarked casing, inserted beneath my entry one desk while kitchen occupied. Within, an image. From my 60th celebration. Me and Sonny knit chuckling with treat on features. Brandon adjacent wielding the blade, chuckling likewise. Reverse, solitary line in his script. You perpetually trusted me. Regret that insufficiency. I occupied with that image hours. Absent tears, absent fury, merely recollecting. Recollecting the youth requesting additional tail pre-slumber. The youth who collided my vehicle into post-container and wept upon my calm. The adult who embraced firmer post his sire's demise. They composed him and affection endured. But genuine affection requires honesty. And Brandon selected deceptions. That evening, I incinerated the image in the hearth. Absent malice, for liberation. I observed blazes encircle the sheet, darken borders, obliterate the grin. Image unnecessary for recollection. Peace essential. And proximity neared. The dawn I revisited willow pines. The heavens pale ash, the variety softening existence sans concealment. I lingered exterior the center extendedly, fixated on the precise location of my luggage-like abandonment. The vehicle area hushed. Branches barren, yet alteration evident. The primary entrances parted and Ruby emerged pre-wrap. She inhaled sharply upon sight. Goodness, Margaret. I grinned. Indeed me. We embraced, not formally, not briefly, but as survivors. Her limbs warm, and realization struck of embrace safety absence duration. Within, the locale altered. Surfaces recently polished. Illumination brighter. The shared space featured fresh volumes, superior screen, and authentic brew percolating nearby. I learned your actions, Ruby remarked, guiding to a serene seat in the passage. The gifts, the discussions. Margaret, transformation complete. No, I responded. I merely ceased permitting others to find me. We traversed the passages jointly. I toured Doris's former space. Now a perusal area. Personnel glanced, some grinning, some astonished. Several occupants identified me. I acknowledged each. Invisibility vanished, mine included. That midday, I delivered an address in the fresh engagement space. Collapsible seats arranged and personnel prepared treats. Ruby presented me as notable, but I denied. I'm present absent wealth, I initiated. And absent injury. I'm present from muting. And awareness of your persistent sensation. Every gaze fixed. Some moistened. I desire conveyance of words wished upon me ages past. I declared, you burden not. You forgotten not. And you concluded not. Claps ensued, gentle initially, then amplified. I grinned, sensing each isolated evening's burden replaced by warmth, fullness. Upon home return, I concluded the fund. The Margaret Initiative would evolve nationwide, providing judicial and monetary defense for seniors risking exploitation. We'd engage lawyers, establish aid lines, form alliances with care centers and tribunals. Brandon, he accepted the bargain. 10 years. He attempted further note. I returned sealed. That segment sealed. I expended years, concluding days, composing to each aider. Aaron, Ruby, even Dr. Levine. Gratitude not for rescue, but companionship during self-rescue. And then on January's initial flakes, I executed decades absent act. I composed to self. Brief, single sheet. I vocalized at fireside. The feline coiled at base. Beloved Margaret, sanity intact. Trust not excess. Strength present. You merely female of profound affection. And upon life erasure attempt, you grasped the tool and crafted the close self. Pride immense. Affectionately, self. I creased the note, positioned in a tiny timber container, and placed on the ledge. Legacy unnecessary of wealth or vengeance or equity. Superiority present. Liberation. And initially in existence, I existed utterly, wholly, entirely liberated. Appreciate your attention. Remember to join and feel welcome to post your experiences in the comments. Your expression counts.